Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Footy Travellers Podcast.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Footy Travelers Podcast. I'm Colin Martin. I am joined once again by my co-host, travel fiend and footy kithead, Mike Tyrone. Mike, what's new in your world today, my friend?
I am just getting back from a bit of travel. I was in sunny Florida amongst the Gators' grandparents and gregarious locals.
Oh.
But, I was there for more important G words like golf and good weather. And now I'm back to my humble abode.
Gotcha. Are gregarious locals the same as gregarious locals, or are they more like aligned with Gregor Mendel and very scientific, or how does that work? Yeah,
it's all very, very scientific people,
Okay.
all heading to West Palm Beach. Yes,
Gotcha.
not at all gregarious.
All right. Well, G's up, regardless of what coast you're on. Anyway,
this is Colin, the editor. He's got better vocabulary than I.
I read good. Well, today, listeners, we're joined by fellow footy traveler, and in this particular case, fellow U.S. soccer supporter, Brian Davis, who's going to share some interesting stories from his travels over the last few years. Brian, it's great to see you again, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it. It's good to see you guys.
Now, as we alluded to, you've been someone we would label an FFT for a while now, at least over a decade at this point. You actually have a story about your first ever away match to support the U.S. And it involves a theme, funnily enough, that seems to be pretty prevalent with some of our recent guests. So tell us a little bit about how you may or may not have convinced, someone to join you.
So, my story is I live in Louisville, Kentucky, which, traditionally a soccer hotbed. We get all kinds of games in our backyard, as you might imagine. But for years, starting back in, I think my first game was 2001 at a Dos Acero in Columbus. And then I would go to games in Columbus and Chicago, and just, road trips with some of the guys. And back in, I guess this would be early 2013. My oldest child was 6 months old, and my wife looked at me one day and said, "I haven't been on vacation in a while. I need you to take me somewhere. Take me to a beach. Take me to St. somewhere."
We've all heard that.
Yes, that is she still says it to this day. But at that point, it was take me somewhere. We hadn't been on vacation forever, and the same week, I got an email from the American Outlaws, who I was a member, of course, and, "Hey, come to Costa Rica. There's going to be a World Cup qualifier in Costa Rica. It's going to be great." So I talked to my boss about it at work. I'm like, "Don't you think this sounds like a great idea?" He said, "Yeah, this sounds great. Sounds right up your alley." I get home that night. I asked my wife, I said, "You want to go to a beach? How does Costa Rica sound?" "Oh, Costa Rica sounds great." "Okay, well, while we're there, we're going to catch a soccer game. I hope you don't mind." She's like, "Yeah, it's fine. It's just a couple hours at a time. Who else is going?" And exact words out of my mouth were myself and 50 of our new best friends.
Yes.
Now, to this day, I think 15 of the 50 people on that trip still actively go to American Outlaw games. We're in touch with some of those people. And some of those people have actually become some of our best friends who, we share, we go to each other's birthday parties, drive around. When we go to games today, we'll get Airbnbs together.
Yeah.
And have become not just people we go to games with, but part of our, extended family.
Love that. Yeah. Mike and I.
So a pretty significant trip is what you're saying.
Life changing. I think, there's a few moments in life where you do something and it makes a huge impact on the rest of your life. And that is definitely one of them. I remember distinctly being in the pool, and that match happened to be bookend with a Mexico match in Columbus. And so I had organized a bus trip the day after we got back to drive up the day of the game, catch the game, come back. Thought I was hot shit. oh, I'm going to both games in this window. Look at me. Ooh, I'm the cool guy. And all these people were like, yeah, we're all going too. We're going to go home and then come back.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is your hobby? This is like what you guys do? And they're like, yeah. And a real light bulb must have gone off, because I was just like, wow. And it also ended up being, probably the repercussions. That's probably the most expensive thing I've ever done in my life, based on all the trips afterwards. So yes, life-changing to say the least.
Yeah, we're starting to rack up the bill a little bit, huh, Mike?
Oh, yeah, a little bit. But I have a question for all of those that have to convince their significant others. How quickly, from suggesting Costa Rica being the trip for a vacation, did you then allude to there going to be a soccer match that you would be attending? Was it same breath? Was it the same conversation? Was it in the same week?
Well, I'm in sales, so I believe in being very upfront and honest in a sales approach. So yes, I told her the whole thing. We're going to go to Costa Rica. We're going to, you start with the good stuff. We're going to go to an all-inclusive resort. We don't have to do anything. We just get there, and it's going to have pool. It's going to be right on the ocean. All the food's included. It's going to be great. And by the way, and so she said, yeah, that'll work. So now I kind of have to drag her to games. She doesn't love going to the games. She loves the events, but not the games themselves.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. My follow-up question is, you mentioned about 50 people went to this Costa Rica away match, this qualifier, and maybe about 15 of them you consistently see now. Is there any correlation between those that have partners that need convincing to go and the 15 that are still left all these years later making it to games?
I think there's only been one divorce out of those people that were there.
It's a good percentage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Compared to the American average.
Yeah.
Right,
it's
exactly.
40-50% of marriages end in divorce. So no, we're doing well.
Love it.
And I think it's important when you go to these games too that you do other things. When we go to Panama, you go see the Panama Canal, right? You just don't sit around the hotel and drink all day, though that's mostly what we do.
Yeah,
it's important to do the other stuff, when you're taking these trips.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, that is essentially half, at least, the spirit of the Footy Travelers. We love going to new places, seeing new things, indulging in the culture, both in and outside of the stadium. What's been your most maybe memorable or exciting experience outside of a stadium during an away trip?
I've got my little spreadsheet pulled up.
Brian's a spreadsheeter too.
I'm a spreadsheet.
Company. Yep.
Yeah.
Got to.
I got one for myself, for my wife, both the kids. I regret not doing them for my local teams because I don't remember how many matches I've been to those. But I do have the spreadsheet up. Going away at Cuba was really cool.
Ooh.
That was a very, very cool experience. The World Cup in Brazil was great, of course. I don't know. Every one of them's fantastic. The worst one, of course, is Couva with Trinidad Tobago. That's easily the worst of the bunch.
Certainly a terrible on-field, in-stadium experience for all of us.
Yes. That was just not a pleasant experience. But I'm ill prepared for that. Maybe England. I took my kids to England. So I took my son to Wembley. We got to go see the Queen's Jewels and tour, doing some of the stuff there. And then we took the train underneath. We took the Channel. And went and stayed in Amsterdam, which I love. And I didn't know it at the time, but Amsterdam's my new favorite city. And then we drove to Belgium for a game against Italy. It was a terrible game. Almost got us lost on the way there. It was really bad. But that's probably my favorite trip is that whole entire bit.
Nice. Yeah, but Europe makes it really easy to get around with the trains and the Channel, and we'll be heading that way shortly for Euro, so we'll see how well we get around. Hopefully we don't get as lost, especially before a game. But
I'm a big proponent of alternative
part of the travel
of transportation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anytime you can.
So there's sights to see, there's things to do when you travel, but then there's also people to meet. And you've actually met a few pretty, I would say, significant or distinguished individuals in your Footy travels. At least from pictures, it looks like you've met Fernando Fiore. Tell us about that.
Yes. So that's probably the picture you saw with myself, my wife, Fernando, and Grant Wahl. That was in, I think, Jacksonville. Yes, you look adorable. Sorry, my 6-year-old needs to show me her princess dress. It's important stuff to do.
Is it a pink princess dress?
Of course it was.
Of course.
It was Cinderella's pink dress.
Yes.
Anyway, okay, so we were in, I think it was Jacksonville,
Okay.
and it was a real small night before party, and Fernando's there, Grant's there. Actually, my favorite person to talk to there was Rob Stone.
Okay.
I sat there and talked to Rob for a while, and I asked him. I said, "Do you like doing this? Do you like going to these pregame parties and stuff?" He goes, "Man, this stuff is great. I've got 5 kids at home." I thought, okay, I like you. Fernando, we've met a few times. He recognized my face. I don't pretend he knows my name at all. We've had mojitos in a pool together, and again, just he's an easy guy to talk to about soccer, and
Nice.
and I think, I'm not one of those guys that, I like meeting those guys. I like chatting with them, but I think I'm pretty good at not making it awkward, where it's just like, hey, just talk. It's just 2 guys sitting around chit-chatting. And he was great. So I saw him in Qatar and stopped and talked with him a minute. And he's like, yeah, he knew exactly who I was. He said, remind me again how I know you. And I was telling him that. But my favorite bit of Fernando's, we hang out with him all night long. We're at Jacksonville. We go to the game the next day. We happen to be walking by the media spot. Fernando looks over, sees my wife look over, and looks and goes, come give Fernando a hug. Both arms out. And so my wife loves Fernando whenever she sees him. I think he remembers her name. But he's a really, really nice guy. I like Fernando quite a bit.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but did she share mojitos with him in a pool? This is the real question.
No, because she chose not to go to Trinidad. That was her own fault.
See, okay, so even the Trinidad and Tobago trip had some positives, it sounds like.
Yeah, didn't outweigh the negatives, but yes, there's still some fun. Yeah. There's always fun to be had.
Right.
I'm just glad he didn't say, come give Daddy Fernando a
hug. Right, yeah. There's a lot of other ways that could have gone.
Different tone, yeah.
Yes, that could have been really awkward.
So you mentioned that you have a photo with Fernando, but also with Grant Wahl. Tell us about how you've met Grant Wahl, and did you get to kind of form any relationship with him as well?
Yeah. So on a previous trip to Trinidad, what we call good Trinidad, the one where we actually got a result, not bad Trinidad, we were staying at the same hotel with a lot of the media, and we were coming back. We'd been out for the day. I forget what we were doing. We came back to the hotel. Most of our group was saying, hey, we're going to go out to the bars. And my wife and I and some of the, 2 other couples were like, hey, we're just going to hang out here. So they all went out. And so the 3 guys were sitting around the table. We're getting ready to order drinks, take them out to the ladies. And Grant Wahl walks by. And I had never met him before. I said, hey, Grant, you want to sit down and have a drink? So we bought him a drink. And again, the next thing you know, 30, 45 minutes go by. It's 4 guys just kicking it, having drinks, talking about soccer, trading war stories, just really having a wonderful time. My wife comes in, yells at me because we hadn't been out there yet. So I send the waitress out with drinks for her. And then we sit there and we got Grant pretty well sloshed that night. And then ever since then, whenever I would see him out, we'd stop and just chit chat. So I don't pretend he had my phone number. We weren't, tight, but I liked him a lot. He always went out of the way when he would see me to say hi, and acknowledge and chit chat with me and whoever I was with or my wife. I had no problem spending his time talking with people. And so I liked him quite a bit. I think, the world's a lesser place for not having Grant around, candidly.
Absolutely.
We, being in the space, U.S. soccer and beyond, the community is very big, but at the same time can feel very small. And I feel like we've met a lot of people that have had some type of interaction with Grant, some really good relationships, some, just maybe fleeting, but every single person has said he's, gives the most attention. He's very thoughtful. He's kind. He's feels like he's genuine when he's wanting to have the conversation. And so it's awesome that you've been able to, you were able to experience the beauty of Grant Wahl while he was around. And I totally agree. I think there's a huge gap missing in not only U.S. soccer culture, but in soccer culture and in the world just for his loss. It's terrible. It's tragic.
Yeah, I think you're right. We need I hope we get another voice like his, or somebody that kind of is able to give the sport the attention it needs and the profile that he did. So it really was a special guy.
Yeah.
And really, like you said it really well, really, really good guy.
And I'll just add, to me, or for me, it wasn't just his covering of the sport, but all of the other tangential things that deserved and were worthy of attention. I think his reporting on, the situation in Qatar, just as an example, before the tournament and leading up to that, and the trip he took ahead of time to kind of scope it out. Just it brought a more intentional and human side to soccer reporting or soccer journalism that I think, again, to reiterate what you guys have already just said, just kind of set him above and put him on a different level.
I thought maybe the most interesting about just thinking about how he wrote, keep in mind, I haven't read his books, but his articles weren't full of X's and O's. They were much bigger picture stuff, not necessarily, breaking down the qualities of, Tyler Adams and what he's good at, what he's not good at. It was more of a big picture feel. And I think makes it really accessible for people that maybe don't know the game or are just learning the game to a certain extent.
Yeah. I don't know who said it, but of all the unimportant things in life, soccer or football is the most important. And that game in that rectangle for 90 minutes, it's important to us. And, but in the grand scheme of things, it's less important than a lot of other things in life. And I think Grant really just epitomized that and really understood that concept. So, of course, footy fans of Grant Wahl's writing will remember and probably be upset about his, tragic death in Qatar. We could do a whole episode about our shared experiences there around Grant. But Brian, you had a little bit of an experience, I'll say, related to Grant Wahl's death after Qatar. Do you mind maybe shedding some light on that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
So, obviously, we're all in Qatar together, and at the game against Iran, I walked through security, and I had a rainbow armband on. It's something that I've been wearing ever since the Pulse nightclub shooting. We had a game in Orlando. There was a game in Orlando months after the Pulse nightclub shooting, and so a friend of mine was giving out armbands, and equality and those things. Those are things that I feel very, very passionate about. And so I've continued to wear the rainbow armband at every game I go to. And security stopped me as we were outside the stadium. The guy said, you can't wear that into the stadium. I said, yes, you can. No, you can't. Yes, I can. Can you do me a favor? Get a supervisor. Supervisor comes over. He's fine going in the stadium. So then we go into the zone outside the stadium, and and you're in the zone for almost 2 hours, right? We got there so early, eating and watching the game and the ridiculous show going on. Then I go into the stadium, and we go in early, and we're sitting in our seats, and a friend of mine gets up and he leaves to go to the bathroom or whatever, and comes, and some security guards came down. 2 guys came down and said, they saw you on the camera, you need to take that off. I said, I've been through this before. I don't have to take it off. There's not a dress code at the World Cup.
Right.
It's not offensive. And I didn't say all that, but I was like, I don't have to. This is, and so kind of back and forth for a minute. And the 2 guys leave, and I think that's the end of the conversation. Well, a couple minutes later, they returned with a couple other guys, and the guy comes down and says, and at this point, there's already some pictures out. You've probably seen pictures online of me kind of pointing out the armband, and I was letting somebody with AO know what was going on, and they notified the State Department and then FIFA, and and those guys knew what was going on. So when the 5 or 6 guys came back down, I said, can you talk to the supervisor? And the guy who barely spoke English said, I'm the supervisor. And it was the guy from before. And I thought, okay, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
This is not going to be good. There was a guy from FIFA there right behind them. And I knew he was from FIFA because he had stopped to introduce himself before they came down, just to say, hey, you have any problems? And then they show up. And then they grab me, which I can assure you I did not enjoy that. It kind of scared the crap out of me, if I'm being honest.
So they were a bit physical.
That is understating it. You had 6 guys, and I'm not a small human being by any means, but these guys they weren't big guys, so they all grabbed me and they're twisting my arms, and we all know these type of people in the world. So, but they're doing somebody else's jobs. None of these are Qataris, by the way. These are all migrant workers hired to be security at the World Cup. And so they get me up the stairs or shove me up the stairs, wrenching my arms around, and I can hear my friends yelling at them because there were other people in the section yelling at them. And we get to the top of the stairs and we're now in the concourse, and I see a black door in front of me. And my first thought is, this is bad. I'm not going in there. Like, I was going to start fighting back. Well, because that's scary. I don't want to be in a Qatar, in that situation.
Right.
They start aiming me for some stairs to go outside the stadium. So immediately, I'm not saying at this point I was calm, but I realized, okay, they're just trying to get me out of the stadium. They're not trying to take me into a back security room. They're not trying to, God knows what would happen there. So
yeah.
Anyway, so we're downstairs, and as we're going down the steps, and they realize by the time we're going down these steps, I'm not fighting back. I'm telling you guys, I'm not fighting you. And so we get down the stairs. And at this point, there's more just hands on me guiding me, and we're going across a television reporter, and it was I think he was a Dutch reporter. He was the guy that earlier when the World Cup started, they told him to stop filming at a spot, and he said,
yes.
You invited us here. That was that guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
wow.
Maybe Danish. I saw some footage of Danish reporters.
You're right, Danish.
And they slap the camera out of the cameraman's hands, and
And he even said, hey, you invited us here. I remember that line. What a great line. You invited the world here.
I can film here. We have permission to film here. This is a permission to film here. Are you okay?
They twisted my arm a little bit when I came up, but other than that, I'm fine.
Okay.
It was very aggressive.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why, do you think? Because of that one?
So I went through security with this on. Security said it was fine. I talked to a gentleman sitting there, obviously I haven't been drinking, and just sitting in a chair. They came up, said you have to take it off. I said, no, that's not true. And then these gentlemen came up and fairly aggressively grabbed me, twisted my arms back.
So he films it, and the guys, of course, are covering their face, whatever. So I'm outside the stadium. The FIFA guys there with me the whole time.
Excuse me. Do I need to leave or? Okay, I mean, okay, getting back in.
Long story short, I get back in the stadium. I'm able to watch the entire game with my armband on the whole time. And when I get back in, the security guards are standing there, and I just look at them and say, "Thanks, guys." And my friend's like, "That's probably a good idea. You probably don't want to spike the football too hard there."
Mm-hmm.
But it was scary. It was a scary event.
Wait, so they escorted you out of the stadium?
Yes,
and you then just proceeded to go back through,
FIFA.
like as if you were just, or FIFA like the people that were with you.
Yes, the FIFA representative cleared it for me to be able to go back in the stadium, open up the door that they pushed me out of, and was able to go right back into my seats. Walk past the security guard. So, because it's bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
It's bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it happened. Nothing else happened the rest of the time we were there. I was nervous leaving the stadium a little bit. I thought, okay, this is, but I was with friends. And then the next day, we left real late the next day, and we were kicking around the idea of staying through the knockout game. I was like, you know what, I'm done. I think I'm done here. Get back to the family. It's been 2 weeks. Want to get home. And made it back home. Didn't really talk about it at all until I got until I was out of the country, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Right.
And but back to the Grant Wahl bit is, Grant passed away a few days later, and there was concerns out of the gate that something bad had happened, something nefarious had happened to him.
Right.
And
Right.
so I get
real
a phone call.
quick. I'll just, for the listener's sake, remind anyone who didn't keep up with that story. Grant Wahl had a similar incident trying to enter a stadium with a rainbow on a T-shirt. He was there very early for his reporting.
Yes,
And he was documenting it.
Yeah. And then he was also tweeting, I think, his experience that he was having with them not letting him in because of the rainbow. And eventually he got in. But yeah, he expressed that he was having some trouble as an invited reporter into the country because of this, rainbow pattern or logo. So.
And he was highly critical of the Qatar hosting bid anyway.
Right.
So he had a bit of I'm sure he was on some watch lists in terms of if they're targeting, innocent fans with small wristbands that like you have. Yeah. I'm sure that he had his name on some kind of list. So I think you're absolutely right. The tenor of what it felt like to be an American that was, had all of our freedoms to being in Qatar during that time, because after Grant died, I was coming back to Qatar and I was really worried because I didn't know what the situation was on the ground. Like, was there something that went on in how that went down?
Well, but I mean, back to Brian's story. Yeah. Brian, tell us a little bit about how that came up again for you.
And I was told by someone that once the Qatar was eliminated from the World Cup, that if we were going to go back to that knockout game, to be on your best behavior because they weren't messing around anymore. They'd already been knocked out of the World Cup. To be honest with you, they'd been embarrassed throughout the World Cup. It was, I think their Emir even said, "Why do we spend all this money for the world to hate us more?" Or not hate us more, but well, you guys
disrespect them.
Yes, and we're disrespecting. Yeah. Well, you told us we could drink beer, and then a week before, 2 days before we left, you said we can't. So, that's a small thing in the world, but anyway, we could do. We could do a whole podcast on that. Anyways, my wife and I are out at dinner. We're having a nice dinner. We're definitely into a second bottle of wine, and we're having a good time. And I get a phone call from somebody that almost always texts me and just says, "Hey, the news about Grant is true. He's passed away. Nobody knows for sure what happened, but I want to let you know the State Department called us." This is somebody with AO to check and make sure you were okay and didn't have any issues and gotten out of the country. Myself and a couple other people too. So,
and were these also people who had, donned some sort of rainbow paraphernalia or?
At least one other person had. Yeah. And so that kind of freaked me out, kind of ruined dinner a little bit. So, that was a really weird experience, obviously, and I don't talk about it a whole lot, but that's the gist of what happened there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing it, and it definitely brings back memories to just that time where there was a lot of angst and unknown what was going on, right? And being in the stadium and being, hassled for what you're going to bring into the stadium, or can I do this while I'm here? And there's just a lot of nerviness kind of throughout. And so, even to the point of like seeing that black door, like you don't know what's behind that door, but in a country like Qatar, it makes you second guess, okay, what are they putting? Are they bringing me to that? And is that something that I need to be extra concerned about based off of the interaction I'm having with these people right now? And I just, it's crazy to think about as you look back at it, just the amount of tension that we kind of were all sort of amongst. But I will allude to a point where it was much more positive, which is you had mentioned Orlando, and that was being the start of when you started wearing that rainbow wristband, which is actually where we met you for the first time, was in Orlando.
This is
and
true.
you were rocking the wristband, and you were capoing at Exploria Stadium for U.S. versus Panama, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before that
So
World Cup, yeah.
Yes.
Before that World Cup, yeah.
Pre-World Cup. And we talked about, I was at the Couva game when we were eliminated from the World Cup. So we had been to Mexico 3 days earlier, right?
Yeah.
We got a result in Mexico, 0-0 tie at Azteca.
Best
then
0-0 win we had.
Yeah,
that year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anytime you get that in Mexico, and so at that point we knew going into Orlando, if we win, it was very, very difficult for us not to make the World Cup. And I even skipped the night before party so that I was emotionally, physically ready to go. And I woke up in the morning, and if anybody had asked, I would tell you I was the main character in the story that day. I had a main character day. I was dictating to my car ride down what we were going to listen to. We're listening to, Party in the USA and all the USA stuff. And I was bouncing around. And Max asked me to come up and help him capo, which is not something I normally do. And I was happy to do it that day. My friends maintained that if they had left me in Orlando, I would still be wandering around downtown Orlando partying to this day because I was so excited. And we were turning around going to Costa Rica, but now all of a sudden the Costa Rica game, okay, just don't lose by
I think it was 6 goals. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're good. So Costa Rica, is the happiest 0-2 game I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
you met me on a good day. I was at I was at peak performance that day.
What did you think of the we qualified banner that they pulled out at the end of that match, though? I was a little bit hesitant with that maneuver. I liked it because we were on home soil, and obviously we were really happy with the result. But it was like, did we technically qualify today?
We didn't. We didn't.
I'm all in with that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you when we were going through the Brazil process. There was a game, the first game in Costa Rica. We were not qualified, but we were on our way to qualifying. And Costa Rica was on their way to qualifying, and we would sing to the Costa Ricans, "You are going to Brazil." And we'd sing to ourselves, "We are going to Brazil." We are going to Brazil, and then we'd sing to them, "You are going to Brazil." So, I think when at that point, it's okay. You've just about done it, and if your only obstacle is winning 6-0 or not to lose 6-0, then I think it's okay to say we've qualified.
The probabilities are there,
right,
to support it. Yeah.
Well, we don't want to talk about probabilities because the probability of us not qualifying going into the game at Couva was like there's a 1 in 27 chance that we don't qualify, and we managed to make that happen.
Yeah. Should have played the lottery that night too.
Yeah, not good.
I was just looking at a calendar about what's coming up next and where we're all heading, and looking at the year. And gosh, that was 2 years ago. That game in Orlando where we met.
That's crazy.
Connected. Time is flying.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Speaking of what's next, what's up next for you, Brian, in your travels, in your footy adventures? Any trips to Costa Rica planned again?
Until we play there. Next trip is, we're going to have all these home games anymore. So it's going to be a very home schedule for the next couple of years, which is fine for the most part. We are going to the Brazil game in Orlando, the friendly.
I'll see you there.
And I might see you there.
Taking the kids.
Cool.
Because they have a theme park there. It's a new one. They have a mouse logo. You guys have probably maybe heard about it. But 11-year-olds and 6-year-olds really enjoy those parks. So
interesting.
It's like mouse and cheese themed, or
yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's very heavy on that. Well, the 6-year-old came up with a princess dress, which I'm sure we'll be wearing around the park.
Okay.
So yeah, we're going to go down. My 11-year-old, we're bringing one of his friends, and so myself and the two 11-year-olds will go to the game. My wife and daughter will stay at the Disney Resort, and then we will go back. And then for 4 days after that, we're going to go do the parks and make a big experience with the kids. So should be a wonderful, wonderful trip. Though I don't expect to get a result against Brazil, should still be a wonderful trip.
Hey, Well, you never know.
You're making footy travel work in all of the family's favor, right? Everyone gets the box ticked.
Listen, there's ways to play the game, and this is how you play the game. This is how you do it. So,
Brian, I don't know what kind of sales you're in, but I'll buy a few.
Right.
Sold.
And then I'll do most of Copa. I think I'm going to do pretty much all of Copa. I think I'm going to miss Kansas City, unfortunately, but the plans to do the rest of that. And then hopefully, we play that first knockout game in Vegas, which again makes the wife happy to go to Vegas. She'll suffer
over Phoenix, Arizona, Glendale. Yeah,
surprisingly, right?
All right. Well, it sounds like we'll be seeing you soon, Brian. Depending on when this episode comes out, listeners might be seeing you soon as well, or have just seen you with the AO crew. Looking forward to the summer for sure.
Should be exciting. The Nation League starts up at the end of the year. We do get an away game in November, I believe.
There we go. Well, I want to reiterate Mike's thank you for sharing your story about your relationship with Grant Wahl and your experience in Qatar, and just all your great stories that you've shared with our audience here today. So thank you for coming on, and like I just said, we'll see you soon.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys. You all have a wonderful day. Okay.
And thank you, fellow footy travelers, for listening today. A reminder to rate and review the podcast to wherever you're listening. And until next time, as my good friend William Michael likes to say,
be loud, be proud, and be good to each other.